Welcome to the Situation Room. I'm James Carey and I'm all about helping you write better sitcom scripts. And here at the beginning of the year, it's January 2021 as I'm recording this. The world is in chaos. The media industry is also all over the place. There are pandemic restrictions still going on. Who can film what? What does the industry want? It feels like we're out of control, that everything's out of control. But here's the big secret. We were never in control of the industry in the first place. And the only thing that us writers have ever been in control of is the scripts that we write. So that's what I really like to focus on here in the Situation Room. But also I'd like to focus on the skills that you need in order to write better scripts. In my case, better sitcom scripts. That's what I'm really passionate about. So that's what I'm about. And in this video, I want to talk about how to be a better writer in the coming year and have a few tips on how to do that. And they actually don't involve writing in this particular video. So maybe that's a bit of a surprise. And you can read all about what I'm saying here on my blog, Sitcom Geek. And I'll put a link to that down below in the show notes. So here we go. A few things that are surprising that might help you be a better writer. And the one big thing for this video is this: reading. Reading. Writers are readers. It kind of seems obvious to say that. I mean, I could quote dozens and dozens of successful writers who all basically say, read. Stephen King is probably one of the best known who talks about writers being readers. If you don't want to read anything at all, I don't quite know why you want to write anything, unless, of course, you're motivated by politics or a passion that means that you want to communicate what you think. But even then, to do it better, you need to see how other people do it. You need to be learning from them. And also, you need to be getting ideas and getting other ways of thinking into your head so that you can be a better writer, so that you can write better characters, for example, who think very differently from how you think. So, I mean, there are so many reasons to be reading more that I kind of hardly know where to begin on that. So I'm not going to. I'm going to take it as a given that you probably think that you should read more. Most of us do. I've got loads of books behind me. There are loads more over there. There are loads more in the house on the other side of that wall. Reading books is clearly something that I'm serious about, and I think that you should be serious about. And yet we always seem to be disappointed with what we're reading. So let's have a think. How can we read more books this year? How can we read more books this year? Well, it's only going to happen if you make time to do it. You have to make time to read. So it may be that you need to think harder about a slot in the day when you can regularly read. It may be that you used to commute and read, or that you start doing that again and you were listening to podcasts. Well, maybe you should read rather than listen to something. But we'll talk about listening to stuff in a little while. Is there a slot in the day, maybe after lunch, where you don't feel like doing very much? Or maybe you just need to go to bed earlier, 20 minutes earlier. If you go to bed 20 minutes earlier and read for 20 more minutes, then that's going to make quite a big difference to how many books you read over the course of a year. And that's the thing to real productivity, is actually not the big, long 7-hour session. It's the 20 minutes every day, 5-6 days a week, that mean that you can actually start to get somewhere. So you just sort of break it down into a series of tasks. So you need to make more time to read and work out when you can read. It may be after you've put the kids to bed. It may be you need to switch off the TV slightly earlier. Just have a think, have a long, hard think about how you can read more books, because it's not just going to happen. But one other way to read more books is to want to read more books. And it's to want to read the books that you're buying for yourself to read. So you don't want to be reading too many books that feel like homework. You want to be excited about the books that you're reading. You want to be interested in them. And therefore, what you need to do is actively find books to read. The Amazon algorithm will probably find you some books to read, but actually all that's really going to do is make your echo chamber bigger and louder. And you want to be getting out of that echo chamber. You want to be writing characters, especially in sitcoms. That's my area. You want to be able to write characters that you strongly disagree with, and they'll only be really good characters and funny characters and believable characters if you know how people like that think, rather than the current trend of sort of othering people and just assuming that your enemies are are worse than popular German dictators. So we really do need to get out of that echo chamber and find other books to read. So lots of ways of doing that, other than the first thing, which is to read more classics, to go back to other periods in history where they thought very differently, and read books from those eras. And Jane Austen, Henry James, go and read Tom Jones. Go and read just one of those books that you fancied reading. Read some Dickens. Read the first novel, Tristram Shandy. Go and read some Proust. If you feel that you really want to do that, again, choose something that excites you, that you're curious about, rather than something that just feels like homework. And you might be pleasantly surprised by what you come across. Also, read stories that are the basis for lots of other stories. You may see on my shelf there, I have quite a few Bibles. I happen to be a Christian, a believer, but the Bible has inspired virtually every other story in Western civilization for the last 1,000 or so years. So it's worth getting a handle on that. So maybe read some books of the Bible. There are 66 to choose from. Read some of those. Or read Pilgrim's Progress, or read Paradise Lost. Just try and think how you could read some classic literature. A lot of that stuff is actually fairly short. So you might want to just have a look at that and just try to read something. Just take a week to read it, 20 minutes a day, and you might well be done. So have a think about that. Some classics to read, and actually that might really. You might discover that it turns out you really do like Dickens novels. You really do like Hardy novels. I don't, but you might. But also you want to be reading other genres. So it may be that you're instinctively a fiction reader. I'm not, as my bookshelf will probably testify. I slightly have to make myself read fiction. So I do that, and I've worked hard to find some authors that I like, and I keep doing that. But it may be that you naturally read fiction. You should probably read some more non-fiction. Whichever it is, and once you get outside of that comfort zone or that echo chamber, you need to be looking for ways to beat the algorithm and to get out of your echo chamber. So you might want to ask friends for recommendations, maybe some really surprising recommendations, and just say, look, let's have some really left field ones. Tell me why you liked it and why you think I might like it, or why I might find it interesting. Or ask them to tell you a book, to give you a book that you'll probably hate. Just anything to get some different ideas, rather than just reinforcing what we already think about the world or literature, or what good writing is. Try to find different forms of writing. Try to read authors who write very differently from you, or stuff that you're used to. Do you read biographies? I don't read many biographies. I should probably read a few more. Do you read poetry? I really don't read much poetry, but I am trying to get into Gawain and the Green Knight, but I'll tell you more about that in a moment. So you need to get out of that echo chamber. How are you going to do that? Go into some secondhand bookshops, pandemics permitting, where there's a really odd selection of books that people don't want anymore. And I bet you one of those is worth 50p. And at the very least, then you get 50p to charity. You don't like the book. Well, doesn't matter really, does it? Go into an actual bookshop. We want those to exist, right? So go there and actually buy some books when you are permitted to do so. So, and then you can actually browse them. But obviously at the moment, you can't do that so much. So make use of the Kindle samples. That's what I do. I actually bought a Kindle. So I changed my reading habit as well. That may be worth doing. Get some kind of e-reader. I didn't want to read an iPad at night because it was possibly stopping me from sleeping. So I spent some money on a decent Kindle reader. And of course, through that, if you've got the iPad or the Kindle, you can get samples. So if you like the idea of a book, you just get the sample and it sends you the first 15, 20, 30 pages and you can read that. And if you like it, you can get the whole book. If you don't, then don't. It's the equivalent of browsing. So you can make better choices in the stuff that you read. You can work a little bit harder to find books you really like, and then that will actually make it easier to get into the habit of reading because you've got an incentive to do so. So here's the other great thing, though. You may be worried about, what if I don't like the book? Do you know what? You can stop reading it. You can chuck it. You can bin it. I I was really excited to read Money by Martin Amis. I found it disgusting, and after about 50, 60 pages, I bought it secondhand for 50p. I literally threw it in a bin. It was kind of good writing. I liked the idea of it, but I just felt it was just horrible. I didn't want to be in that world that was being created. So I chucked it. And I got 100 pages into Gilead by Mary Lynn Robinson. I love the idea of Mary Lynn Robinson for various reasons. Those Bibles might suggest why. She wrote Gilead and other books like that. 100 pages into Gilead, nothing happens. And I sort of went onto Facebook and said, I'm 100 pages into Gilead, nothing's happening. Am I missing something? Can I stop reading now? And the general consensus was, yeah, you can stop reading now, because if you don't think anything has happened, then it's not going to improve from here on in. So I gave it a go. I didn't like it. Nothing, who cares? I now know I don't like that kind of reading, of book. But there was another book called Gentleman in Moscow, which I subsequently really enjoyed. I would have given up on that if my wife hadn't said, seriously, keep going, keep going. So I finished it. I'm really glad I finished it. I really liked it. I still think it's too long. I still think it could just be a little bit, 50 pages shorter, and I think it would be better. But who cares what I think? I read the book. I really enjoyed it, and I would never have read it without the recommendation of my wife, who likes completely different books from me. So maybe your other half has got some ideas on books, and then you can talk about them, and that would be interesting too, wouldn't it? So loads of ways of trying to get more books into your life. One little tip, though, that I would really recommend is you want to go out gathering books. That's great. But there's an excitement to getting a book that makes you want to read it straight away. And I think you want to try and do that as much as possible. You've just bought a secondhand book. It's a bit weird. You start reading it. You love it. What you don't want to do is get that book, you put it on a pile, the pile is 15 deep, and it's going to be 3 months before you get to that book. And the spark of excitement about reading it has gone. So I think you want a short book list. Have a long list, but actually have a short number of actual books that you've paid money for, so that you actually want to start reading them straight away. So that would be my hot tip for reading more and being more excited about reading books. So you want to kind of, in these days, if you do use Amazon, great. You buy it, they deliver it, and you just start reading it, and it's exciting when you rip it open, and that night you can start reading it, and that's when you're probably going to make the fastest and best progress. And then before you know it, you're halfway through, and then you're finishing it in no time. Or you don't like it, and you chuck it, or you give it to a secondhand bookstore, and that's fine too. You still learned something from books that you didn't like and books that you didn't read. And also, the more books you read, the more intelligent you sound to other people. So that's got to be good, hasn't it? So that would be my tip on reading and how to read more. But there's one other thing I'd just like to mention before we wrap up about how to read more. And that is have books read to you. Now that seems impossibly luxurious on one level, doesn't it? But actually, it's never been easier to listen to audiobooks. And that way you can redeem the time that you might otherwise spend washing up, shelling peas, whatever it is that you do, painting a wall, hoovering, anything like that. You could listen to a book. Now, some books lend themselves to being read out loud more than others, and you'll find the kind of books that you like being read to you. I tend to think actually non-fiction is often better to have read to you than fiction, whereas I'd rather read fiction, but your taste may be completely the opposite. Try it. So obviously Audible is the lead contender here. They seem to have hoovered up a lot of the market. It's still not that brilliant a system to use. You can't actually order stuff on your phone, which just seems incredible to me. I presume there's a tax reason for that. But if you don't fancy making Jeff Bezos even more wealthy, there is a free app called LibriVox, where enthusiasts have basically read stuff that's all public domain, so anything that's out of copyright, and that all appears. I guess this year George Orwell's work might start to appear there, although their estate are probably trying to do all they can to cling on to whatever literary rights they can monetize all these years after George Orwell's death. So Audible is the paid version. Huge array of stuff there, loads of really good stuff. My kids listen to a lot of stuff as well, so I think it's worth the monthly payment that I give them. Between me and my kids, we seem to make good use of that. They're also often running special deals as well, and 50% off, and you can buy extra credits for a saving. So if you're canny about it, you can get quite a lot of audio for not very much money, which I think is good. LibriVox is the free version. It may be that you already listen to a lot of audio, and I do, and I did. But actually, podcasts can be good. I've got a podcast called Sitcom Geeks. I hope you managed to get hold of that. 150 episodes to listen to about how to write sitcoms. But actually, quite often, if you start to listen to a podcast or two or three, you start to get recommended similar ones. And again, the echo chamber just gets reinforced. And whatever your politics are, whatever your religion is, or whatever your way of thinking is, you start to end up listening to the same stuff again and again and again. And actually, maybe you want to get out of that habit. So one thing I did was I used to like the Apple Podcast app, and then they changed it a few years ago. And since then, it's been awful. So I just deleted everything that was on it, and started all over again on a new app called Overcast, I think. And also there's Pocket Cast as well, I think, which is better. So maybe just delete your podcast app and start again, and try not to listen to quite so many shows that basically waffle or tell you stuff that you already know. Obviously, there's a place for that. You don't always want to be listening to stimulating literature. So I'm listening to Gawain and the Green Knight via Audible, the Simon Armitage version. And you don't always, you've got to be kind of in the mood for that kind of thing. So sometimes you just want a podcast, which is a mixture of news and comment and opinion. That's all fine. But if you're listening to hours and hours of that stuff, I think you could be making better use of that time by using it to read more books. Have Stephen Fry read a book to you. There really can't be that many better things in life than being read to have a really good book read to you by someone who really knows how to read a book. That's a great experience, and probably better than most of, or 80% of all broadcast television, which is, of course, what we are aiming to write. I don't want to be too disparaging about that. So that's kind of hopefully a way that's going to make you a better writer, so that you can write better sitcoms, better comedy dramas, because that's what I'm all about here in the Situation Room, writing better scripts. That's what I want to help you to do. So if you want to do that, click around for some other videos that I've already done on this channel. Subscribe so that the new ones come out. I've got more of these coming about other ways to be a better writer. And also go and look at my blog, the Sitcom Geek blog, and listen to my podcast, Sitcom Geeks. But if you want to start all over again and write a sitcom, whatever you've been doing before hasn't been working, or you've never done it before, then let me recommend my video course called Writing Your Sitcom, where I break down the process of writing a sitcom into 12 steps. I don't say 12 easy steps, because they're not easy. And the more you read about writing and the more you write, the more you discover how difficult it is. So hopefully I've made it more simple, if not easier, given you loads of homework to do as well. And that all contributes to you writing a better sitcom script that shows what you can do. A script that you can be proud of, and send out to agents, to competitions, to producers, to whatever it is. That's called Writing Your Sitcom. There are links below, but also I've done a special video about that, telling you more about what's in the course. So go and dig that one out. And until then, have a look at that, and I'll speak to you next time.